difficult trying to cop movement. If you think of a large ball here, hands are around that ball, you're off slow again to accelerate. Again, thinking your body. Finally, make that transition. What it is, striking to the. Okay.
You don't want me to touch your eye. See how easy it is? I can do that and be punching it. That's what I'm doing, stare right through me. Be aware, 360 degrees. Right? And great. Okay. Rather than working with each and every one of you, because you're all pretty much the same rank, but I could probably give you a little bit of help by simply making some suggestions. Something I see in common with all of you is that when you get under a little stress, you become very hard, very rigid. And isn't it interesting, a lot of people think that that's what they're supposed to be doing when they study Sanchen. They're supposed to be really hard and rigid. And you see, that's something that happens naturally when you get under stress. So you should, and then when you get under a lot of stress, you have a hard time trying to move. So really, you don't want to really contribute to more stress and more hardness and rigidity. So everything you do in your training should help you become fluid and flexible and being able to react to whatever is happening to you. All right? Now, also when you get under stress, your movements tend to either become abbreviated or non-functional. All right? So now, the first gentleman who did Sanchen, he was really tense, and I know he's, George Mattson is going to probably punch me out or whatever. And so, almost shaking. And then little movements like that, real little movements. And so therefore, when you're training and when you're relaxed doing your kata under a dojo setting, you should try and be a little bit more expansive with your movements. So, get into a little bit broader stance so you feel comfortable when you're not under any stress. And that way, when you get under stress, hopefully you'll end up in something that resembles Sanchen. All right? Now, the other thing was someone stepped and you did a half a step, and your heel was way over here. And that's not a very stable position. So you want to, I think, as newer students, work on a little bit deeper stances. All right, so you feel a little bit more comfortable. When you step, try to move like a cat. All right. And yesterday in my seminar, I kept telling people, don't try to stick that foot out too far, the heel out too far. A lot of stress on your knee. All right, so this is fine. Rigidity. A lot of tension. All right, try to be a little bit more relaxed. This is something that, again, when you're under stress, you get harder, you get more rigid. When you're in the dojo setting, it's easier, or I think more effective, to be a little bit more relaxed. Now, I keep using that word relaxed. It's not really the word I'm looking for. It's like your stance is solid, your body is solid, but not forced. If you have to force any kind of strength, it's not a strength that you can use when you're under stress. All right, so when you get into your Sanchen position, the teacher should touch and determine how hard, if he wants to hit you a little bit, how hard he can hit you. But if you have to tense up for that, it means that you really haven't got the training yet to take that punch. And maybe it's better if the teacher doesn't hit you until you get a little bit stronger. And what the teacher should be doing, Darren, can you come on here? Just get to the Sanchen stand. All right. Now, if the student is really hard in this position, he's holding his breath and he's just tensing his belly, well, you can take anybody off the street and can do this. But what Darren should be working on, the teacher should be working on, is a natural strength. So he shouldn't hit him so hard that he becomes tense in the shoulder. All right, this should be more fluid, so that there's a rebound. So when I hit, it always pops back to Sanchen, a very natural position. And when I touch, I can tell how hard or how strong he is without just going up and walloping him. Because if I do that, the student is going to unnaturally stand there and hold his breath and lock up. And then as soon as the teacher walks away from him, when he starts breathing and starts going back to a natural position. So what your goal is to be naturally strong, however strong that might be. So again, teacher's role is go around, I can feel, just by touching, how he's developing his strength. And I'm trying to get Darren to work more on developing the lats, hips, which controls the lower body. Not so much just tensing his body. And then when he moves, the movement should be nice and fluid. So that there's going to be a little bit more of a hip movement. All right? And thrusting and back. And when he moves, moving like a cat. All right? And again, always reinforcing that. And again, not trying to push him off balance, because if I do that, then he's going to unnaturally tense up again. So everything the teacher does should be supporting and building confidence in the student. Right? Right? Turn. Excellent. Now notice he didn't turn his head first. If he turns and the first thing he does is this with the head, all of the weapons are still here. He might see the danger, but it's too late. He's already going to get hit. So the object, when he turns, is to move his whole body around. So now he's leading with the tools, with the weapons. Okay? Thank you. All right, now let's go through the kata again. And again, you stop me anytime you want to start this thing.
Sure. Go ahead. No, you're good.
All right, so who was the first one that came in? You did Sanchin. Now let's see you go through a Sanchin again, and this time a little bit more relaxed. Don't just forget that George is in front of you. Just pretend that I'm just old John Page. That's it. All right, I get a little bit deeper in your stance. Okay, because when I look at you, I try to get a feeling for your overall posture and how you would perform fighting in this position. All right, this is not just some sort of a ritual where we stand there like that. No, this is a stance that we can use. Now, if you don't feel you can use this stance, then it's not right. So you've got to keep working on that, and the teacher has to keep working on your stance and keep trying to help you. And upper body is excellent. The lower body, just a little bit wider. Now I feel that you can use that stance. Okay? Now let's see you move that arm, bring it back, aim, hit, and go. That's it. Hit. That's it. Hit. Turn. Excellent. That time, you didn't move your head first. Excellent. Hit. 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 Turn. Hit. 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 Double. Always be prepared. Hit. You move your head again. So you're looking at the danger, you're looking at the punch coming at you, but you're not ready to deal with it. It's not a big thing, and I'm probably a little responsible for that because I allowed that to happen when students said, well, shouldn't you always look to see what the danger is before you go there? I said, well, try it. So it developed a whole generation of teachers who were teaching, let's look at the danger first and then move. And I wish I had not allowed that to happen at the time. You know there's danger there, and that's your other six senses working. You know you got to turn, so when you move, you turn with your tools up here. Okay? Other than that, the kata look excellent. Now one other tip. Everything is accelerating. And when you focus, the focus lasts that long. That means your hand is out here and then back. Your hand is out there too long. Okay? That's as long as it is. That's called time on target. So if I hit something, it's out there, penetrates, and then you get back to Sanchin. Excellent. And I hope you don't mind me using you as an example. I hope I will be picked up something from that little seminar.
Turn the head first.
Yeah. I know. Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah. This is not, I don't want to criticize anyone. I don't want you to take it this way. Sometimes when I say things, it comes off that way, but I just want you to try to be a little bit more relaxed when you do your Sanchin. Some of you are just so hard and intense. And that's 60s stuff. That's back when I was 18, 19 years old, and it's a lot easier to be hard than it is to try and be fluid and still try to be developing the strength. It's faster to do it that way, to be real hard, because we can do that right away. So you can take a white belt and start pounding on him right away. It takes longer to take that white belt and work on him on a natural strength, a natural Sanchin belly. Working on that rather than telling him, well, you're really tough, look, I can hit you, but you're standing there like that. And then as soon as the teacher goes away, then you go back, back to being relaxed. So whatever you do in Sanshin has to be something you can maintain throughout the whole kata. And of course, everything you do in Sanshin has to be carried over to your other kata and your other drills. So that relaxed, I hate using that word, but fluid, that's strong, natural Sanshin, this is something that you should be able to take with you, all right? And I can still carry on a conversation while I'm in that natural Sanshin. Unfortunately, it takes longer to get that way. And that's why so many teachers, students will say, well, I see Fidel getting hit like that. I can do it too since they hit me. Look, I can take it. And that was me back in 1956 when Tomoyoshi was testing me or touching me. And I said, I see the black belts getting hit. I can take it. I'm strong. I can do push-ups and sit-ups. You know, he says, no. That's not why I'm doing this. What I'm trying to get you to do is to understand the muscles that have to be worked on so that it covers your kidneys, so it protects your kidneys. But that has to come from Sanshin, and that takes a long time. It takes 2 to 3 years. I said, no, I want it right now. You know? And so I go back to America, and my students wanted it right now. And I gave in to them. I said, okay, be hard, be rigid. And then it takes a lot of years to sort of work your way back, to take the hardness now and try to make it into fluid, smooth, powerful movements. Think of it as a whip, where you take the lead end off the tip of the whip. The whip goes out just as fast, but it has no effect. All right? You put the lead back in there, so you take the nice soft movements, it has no effect. But then you put the lead on, and all of a sudden it has a penetration with the fluid power. Now you have an effective technique. Now there's 2 ways of getting there. The way I think it should be done is to start off with that fluid, softer movements in the beginning, and then slowly building up. But the teachers have to understand they've got to work on the correct muscles, work on the correct building of that Sanshin, so that when you get to be a brown belt, all of a sudden you put a little bit of lead on the end of that tip, and you've got a really powerful strike. Meanwhile, the student can get through fighting, and he can do all of his kata, do all the drills, without having to tense his muscles, because he's developing strength in this region, in his legs, in his arms, without that kind of phony, hard, rigid, the easy way to do it. You have to do it the Sanshin way. And I've been preaching that now for about 30 years. So I only did that the hard way for a short period of time, but a lot of people have stuck with that and retained that. It's hard to get out of that habit. So I notice many teachers now are stressing, the breathing, trying to get people to breathe more. And that's the other thing, holding your breath. These are things that I'm just going to touch on today. And I want the seniors to sort of reevaluate or evaluate how they're approaching these subjects in their dojo, so that we don't get into a lot of trouble later on when we have 5th degree black belts and they're going up and they're shaking when they do their kata and all. Okay, let's do the second Sanshin. And again, and feet and bow. Excellent. Very good, very good. Sometimes it's just little things, and the students oftentimes say, yeah, wow, that really makes sense. Now when you're going through your Sanshin, you see a lot of the Okinawans carrying these tummy jars with heavy loads in them, and what the object is to learn to keep your shoulders down. So that when you're doing your kata, at all times, you never see an Okinawan do that, with the shoulders lifting up, and it's always down. So the movements are lateral, like this. So when you're hitting, punching, or whatever, this is okay. This is not okay. This is not in our style. All right? But even with the woki, the circle block, when you're going forward, everything is down, hitting, and back. All right? But we don't show a lot of the movements as they are applied in the kata. They're sort of hidden or secret. And with time, these things come out in the bonkai and other areas of the system. All right? But always keep them in mind. Always feel that, even though you're not going forward, you feel everything in your being going forward with that thrust. All right? Very powerful technique. All right? But again, it's not holding your breath. Not holding your breath. All right, let's try the third one. Hey! Double. Excellent. All right, feel your lats now. Feel the power. No tension in your shoulder. You're ready for action. Hey, move, and hit. Hey, move, and hit. Hey, move, and hit, and back. Calm your breathing. Hey, great. Excellent. Very good. When you start to analyze and see your kata this way, Uechi-ryu becomes a fascinating system because it is so deep. Not very broad. We don't have a lot of kata. But man, there's so much going on in everything we do. But you have to explore everything you do too and be critical. Like when you're stepping, if your leg is bent like this as you're stepping, and in other words, you've already got your end position before you finish your movement, this should feel uncomfortable. All right, it's like a car with wheels get tilted like that. The car won't go drive very straight. So you've got to feel that your wheels and your feet are in line and all the time are in balance. And when you get into your stance and your heel goes out just a little bit, that's what drives your leg into the position. You get that torque. All right? And if your stance is too narrow, you should feel it. Widen it out a little bit so it feels comfortable to you at this point in your training. Later, it might change. Listen to your body. Teachers are there to guide you. So if I see a student like that, and he's 6'4", he might think he's feeling great, but I know that's not something that he should feel comfortable doing. So I'll deliberately say, try it a little bit wider. And it might be so wide that some teachers might say, wow, that's terrible. But for some really tall people, they'll feel comfortable as a white belt with this stance rather than this kind of a stance. All right? Right here, this is like a closed gate position. Right, hands to feet, bow. All right. I told you that some of the kata will teach you and reveal some secrets of Sanshin. Now, if you evaluate this particular movement with the Sanshin Wawuki, you'll realize that there's a forward movement with that Wawuki. So that all of a sudden you can piece, it's like one of those puzzles that you piece links together and it creates a picture. Well, what you have to do is you study more advanced kata, you've got to see where that applies in your Sanshin. It doesn't mean you change your Sanshin, but it should give you a feeling. Even though you're not moving, you should know that that's part of that movement. Right. Hand positions. Those of you who know me for a while, I've had my hands operated on. This is the last one that has to be fixed. But now, at least with this hand, I can do almost a pretty good hand position. But keep that thumb in. When your palm is flat, the thumb position looks like that. This we used to emphasize because if you do it this way, then when you're not thinking about it, the hand comes out here. But you never want to let your thumb go any further out than this. Like when you're doing a Sanshin thrust. You don't want it out here, catches onto an E sleeve or whatever, and you're going to break a thumb. Whenever your hand is bent, then that thumb goes in. And then this knuckle becomes a weapon, along with your fingertips. All right, flat, bent, and tiger claw. Okay. Second kata will be Kanchu. Excellent. Very good. Okay, so all I want you to do is get into a deep stance, like the one you would use for the block, elbow strike, back fist, into a deep stance. All right, from this position, you should feel very, very strong. Now, would you push a car out of the position from here? Feel strong in that position? That's it. You got to adjust your stance so you feel strength. I know what area you feel strong. That's it. Go. Just a little bit. There you go. Now, once you feel stronger in this position, okay, you put it over here. You don't have it. That's a strong stance. This is a strong stance. Now, so if you're pushing a car, push a car, push it, push it, push it, push it. Push it. There you go. See, those who've been at the hut, they know what I'm looking for. Ready? Push. Push. There you go. Excellent. Ready? Push. Come on, push. There you go. Okay. Now this stance, nice horse stance, with your hips facing that direction. Let's see how strong you are. Go push. Okay. So you got to work on that stance so it feels strong. If you're trying to reach down and grabbing someone, hitting with your elbow, you better be in a strong stance. All right, say ching. Great. Great. Excellent. Okay. Small dojos tend to create bad movements, or you're always adjusting movements. So this gentleman is up here. The next thing you know, his stances were like this because he didn't want to run into the wall. So what you do in those cases, especially if there's no one behind you, you simply slide back. All right? Give yourself room because you want to do your movements correctly. You want full movements. All right, none of these little half movements. Yesterday, we worked on this movement here. Don't block with just your wrist. Try to block using your whole forearm. It's a much more powerful movement. All right? And instead of just playing patty cake here, which I suppose there's some application for that. But if you think of this as grabbing from behind and throwing, and then just sort of lessen the movement, and you have one very practical application. You're blocking, grabbing the arm. Okay? If you slap, and again, you don't, you throw the punch with that arm. Like here, you notice here I'm covering all my body. If I try to block just with this, I'm going to miss 90% of the time. So you want to feel that you're actually blocking with this part of your arm. And then from here, okay, all kinds of things can happen. But if you don't have any purpose, so there's no meaning behind that technique, then chances are it's going to be a meaningless technique. It's not something you'll ever be able to use. Timing. Make sure that whenever you go into someone's space, and let's say you and I are talking, we're having a great conversation, and then the subject of your ex-wife comes up, and my girlfriend, and all that, and the next thing you know, we're, words. All right. Now, the moment I let you get this close, the hair in the back of my head should stand straight up. All right. This is dangerous territory. He could hit me. He could kick me. And if I were Kanbun Weiji, I couldn't stop him. So the first thing I learned in my kata is distance. Where do I feel comfortable? Where do the alarms start going off? And once he enters that space, I'm in a fight. Now, if he's throwing a punch and I'm moving in, just throw it slowly. And I'm moving in, I'm in his space already, my block is only here, guess what? I get hit. So what the kata teaches you is when I get into his space, I'm executing my technique. And the technique is timed with closing the gap. And while I'm intercepting the movement, we call it a block, but really it's not. I'm attacking the problem. The problem is this guy right here. It's not his arm. And a lot of times people, when they're doing the movements, they go like that. They got to get rid of this arm. They think that's the danger. But what's the danger? It's this guy right here. No, we're both equal again. And who's going to get the next punch off the fastest? Okay, so kata is all about timing. 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 All right? So if you come at me here, and here, I've been doing all kinds of things. But he does the same movement, throw a punch, and I'm here. I'm in my space, I'm in his space. My block is only here. That's where his punch is. So I want that. No. Okay, Seisan kata. Oh, let's go to the Seicheng. With that in mind, timing, timing. Knee, palm, chi. There should be a fighting position. You should feel as though you're ready for action. Go. Hey. And great. Excellent. The movements between the movements. If you're not careful, you miss out on half of the goodies that the kata has to offer you. All right? If it's just, all right, and then you're going into the movement you think is next. But really, there was a movement between there. And there's a movement between every movement. And you don't want to miss that. And that's why people who do kata really fast only, they might be very powerful in what they're doing, but they're missing the movements between movements. Okay? Seisan kata. This will be our last kata, and then we'll start working with some of the newer students as well. Hey, long form. Pull down. Okay. Hajime. No count. Take your time. See those movements between movements. Excellent. Very good. Very good. Okay, one of the pet peeves I have, there's a couple of things that always come to mind when I visit a new dojo, and I'll see things like this, when people turn. All right. To me, that is not a good way to turn. There's very few times I'll say, I don't, no, that shouldn't be. That's one of the times. It's not Uechi. It's not Uechi. Now, there are other ways of turning that are part of other styles of karate. But in Uechi-ryu, we move our body as we turn that rear foot. We know there's something happening here. That's why we turn. We're going to face another opponent. We're facing more danger. So for us to do anything that, here, looking at the danger while it hits you isn't going to help you. The object is to get there and to be ready as quickly and as efficiently as possible. If someone's throwing an attack at us, hitting us over the head with a baseball bat, I'd rather have my body be moving that way than to simply be doing this, looking at it, and getting hit. Okay? So that's one of the things that the kata teaches us. But if you don't give the kata a chance to teach you, then it'll never release its secrets. No big secret, really. You just want to get the hell over there and get into the area where you can defend yourself. All right? You move your body like a corkscrew into position. And when this foot lands, timing, your body is ready for action. Okay? That's lesson 101 of Uechi-ryu. The other thing, when you're doing your thrust, again, keep the shoulder down. You've got to try to always move in that lateral plane. All right, this way here. Your body can move, but try to stay away from shifting your body up and down. Once you identify a really strong stance, try to stick with it. All right, it's okay to, moving this way, that way, but you notice that angle. It's a lot like that Sanshin arm position. Very powerful, very sturdy, stable, dependable. All right, so you don't want to be spending a lifetime learning Sanshin and then fight like this, would you? And the same is with your stance. All right, we walk this way, but when we get into danger, first thing we do, shoulders down, stance, posture, and guess what happens? You exhale. And you keep breathing. All right? Now, I've seen some people, who only breathe when they punch or kick. That's dangerous because then you get into the habit of guys talking with you and you're holding your breath. Come on, let me punch real quick so I can breathe. And whatever you train, that's what's going to come out. So I teach people to breathe all the time. Just keep that breath going. All right? And when you punch, it's like a pressure cooker that's going to release by itself. If you force anything, then that's fine too, but it's not necessary. It's going to happen. And the more important thing is you're breathing at all times. Now, if you make a noise, that's okay. If you don't make a noise, that's okay too. But you've got to breathe. All right? Okay, now what I'd like you to do, the black belts, all grab yourself a white belt and help them with the arm rubbing. Now, those of you who were at the seminar yesterday, give that way a try.
Can you get me a bag, my other tape?
I want you to tell them about how to do an arm rubbing.
How did you want to
How to do arm rubbing. Grab any student you want. Just pay attention, this circle here. So again, doing it is fine. I saw it. Now I just want you all to listen and see if you...
Sensei Mattson has asked me to explain arm rubbing. I hope you guys have until next week to listen to this.
You got 5 minutes.
Sanshin is a work in process. Sensei Mattson was very gracious and said 2 to 3 years. 3 years doing it 8 to 10 hours a day. 3 years. For most of us, probably 15, 20. I've been in for 37. and Sanshin reveals itself to me every time I do a Sanshin. So arm rubbing right here is exactly the same process. As a white belt, you stand. To do it in a perfect world is you want to be in a perfect Sanshin. Even though the action is happening here, the real action has to do with the floor. That's the grounding right there. A very strong person, this guy is so strong, he could probably lift up here 200-300 pounds. This floor is holding tons and tons, and it could hold tons more. So ideally, I want to become a part of that. I want to have the ability to hold and lift tons and tons of weight. So therefore, my first instinct is to feel grounded at the floor level. Once I'm at that point, and I set my musculature into Sanshin, which I could go on for days and days explaining what that is, ideally what I want to do is push out and pull back in. Now you'll notice that we're staying in Sanshin throughout the entire process. A lot of times the ego gets in the way, and we start doing stupid things like this, trying to push each other over. It's non-productive. Okay, this is cooperation here. So we push out and pull back in, push out and pull back in. Now you notice it's not just arms. There is a body component where I'm moving in and out. And if you look at my arm, basically it's not moving very much at all. It's my body moving in and out. Again, it's the grounding component. It's not this. The white belt has a tendency to see the action where he thinks it's happening.
He thinks it's a punch, and so
Yeah.
he's kind of...
So, therefore, the years come in bringing it down here, where it belongs.
Very good. Excellent. Excellent. And the beautiful part about Vinny, I love him because he's probably the most sensitive teacher in the world. I tend to be not so sensitive because sometimes I only get a chance to spend an hour with a school a year. So when I go in and I see something that I feel needs to be at least looked at, I tell him. Vinny is very sensitive. He says, white belts are going to do it one way, and yeah, that's okay, but the teacher always has to be guiding. That's why we have senseis, so that they can see that, okay, so it's not perfect, but that's okay for a white belt to do. And then eventually he sees when the student is ready to start using that, and then he gives them little tips on how to touch hands. And just by touching, he guides the energy to come from here, which then draws from the floor. All right, just by touching. And it's the same movement. All of a sudden, I'm moving my body. And it's not just this kind of a punching action. And the way he explained it is very nice. And it is a lifetime activity, and that's what the beauty of it. He's still a new guy. He's only been studying 37 years. Some of us have been studying, a lot of people have been studying a lot longer. And ironically, I say that I'm still a student, and I am. And when I teach a class, I learn as much from the students because I see where their weaknesses are. And I'm always studying everybody in the class to say, to see how I could attack that person if I had to. Just to say how, what my style would do in the event of someone, your tension, the way you move. And you see these things without really thinking about it. So I'm learning from my students, and then I pass that information back to them and say, well, when you're in that deep stance, it looked really pretty, but here you were trying to do something that wasn't natural. Little movements that had no meaning. So then I say, just think of pushing a car. If you got to push a car out of a ditch, would you stand here and go like that? I think not. And all of a sudden the student says, yeah, that makes sense. And then he's here. No, the next time he does that block, wow, he can follow through. And if he does a block just really slow with no energy and anything, I tell him, just accelerate a little bit at the end. So then his movement is like that. Now he's got that little chopping at the end and grounding, and pulling in. And that little comment made a big difference in his form. Because before, he thought he was supposed to put his arm out here so that his elbow could hit it. He forgot that this is an attacking, a controlling movement of its own. Then you hit the hand that represents holding on to someone's head. All right? And guess what? Then your stance moves again. Because if I wanted to throw a ball or something, I wouldn't just stay here and try to throw the ball. I would try to use some energy from my body. Right? So all of a sudden, here, here, here. And then the hand just happens to be here. It's not the kind of thing that I see, slapping the elbow. And that's how your workout
your style and your particular training should evolve. All right? Darren, come on up and, I know you have some things to say as well.
Well, I have always mentioned about the Sanchin stance, and being originally a Kung Fu stylist, right, stances means a lot because everything in Kung Fu is your stance. People don't even look you around. So if anybody ever see me teach, I'm always looking at your feet. Not that I'm falling asleep, you know. I'm watching your stances to see where they are. One of the tips I have about Sanchin stances is that when you go into Sanchin, the important thing is the ball of your feet should be shoulder width or slightly further, right? Whatever feels comfortable for you, because this is just a standard shoulder width, okay? One of the things I would like you to do, if you ever stay in Sanchin, and this is another statement I always make, you come to class to learn, okay? When you practice at home, you practice on your own time with Sanchin, so you're not always trying to keep up with the instructor, what he's doing. And if you don't practice it at home, you're losing a lot of time that you spend in school. When you're here, you should learn, you should practice on your own. And when you practice on your own, you make sure, once you get into Sanchin, what I like to do is I like to walk back and forth sideways, see what kind of balance I have. If my stance is too narrow, when you go to rock, you find yourself going on the side of your foot. Give that a try. Hey, look, try to balance, okay? Then what you want to do is rock backwards and forwards. How firm is that? If your stance is too short, you find out there's no balance that way either. So I always like to take my stance and I rock back and forth, see how that feels, upwards and forward. If that's comfortable without being too wide, then that's a good Sanchin for you. Step through, and you do the same thing. Rock back and forth, side. And when I have my students do Sanchin, once they start, even before I go to test them, I say, give yourself a little rock, feel how solid your stance is, okay? Because I feel good when they say yes. Then we start our first strike. And when we step through, right, and if I see anybody out of position, I would say, give yourself a little rock. How's that feel? Okay, make your adjustment. That's it. Because stance to me is very important, all right? And, well, that's my hit for today.
That's great. That's great. Sometimes you can only see or remember so many things. You know, and oftentimes I'll go in and give 500 different tips and everything, and obviously, maybe you might remember one or two of the things. So what I try to do now is just focus on one or two things, and then next time I come back, get a couple of more things. I try to address the most important things. And stance, as Darren says, to me is very important. And I include turning as part of that stance. The other thing, see now here I go again, but I see some people like when you did Uechi-ryu or with some of the other copy, you cross your arms. In Uechi style, we don't cross our arms. We get inside like this and then break out, but we don't cross like that. Because here, you know, it's like a gun sight, and guess what the target is? All right. So sometimes you're coming up and you're pulling in and pulling the guy's punch right into your head. There's a million little tricks like that, or tricks, suggestions, teaching suggestions that I've given over the years. Vinny is probably one of the he's like a dictionary or an encyclopedia of George Mattson techniques, because he absorbs all this stuff and he does very, very well. He does some things I don't like, but they're very much Vinny. And Fidel and I just had a conversation about his deep stance. We're all different. Now, in the old days, I used to take a guy who's 6'7" and teach him the same way I would teach a guy 5'3". And it doesn't work. You have to adapt. Everybody's an individual. And the reason that we get the big bucks, right, Pat? is that as teachers, we're supposed to see that. We're supposed to be able to identify the different techniques and the different ways of moving for a large person versus a smaller person. And then we give them like a little bit of individual help. If you try to treat everybody as a group, then what you'll end up doing is training in just drills. Because everybody can punch, everybody can kick. And that's why the Japanese, they have 500 students, and you see them line up very beautifully, but they're all doing just very linear kinds of movements. If they had to do something like a Sanchin, they couldn't do it with 500 people and expect really to have them train that way without some individual help. So that's where your sensei is so important. You gotta listen to your sensei. All right, I want to give a few minutes to Fidel, because Fidel also is one of those guys that he's like an encyclopedia, and he knows an awful lot of my secrets. So Fidel, give him one secret.
Well, I'd like to actually touch on conditioning a little bit. Sensei was talking about conditioning earlier, how he feels that you should start soft and work up and become stronger later on. I didn't do that. I started hard, and
Really?
that's the way I was taught. I started my study in the UK before I trained with Sensei Mattson, and fantastic instructor. But that's the way he did things, and we conditioned to the high heavens. We were really strong, and and it was all about strength and very little focus on fluidity. And I got to tell you, I've been training for 12 years now under Sensei Mattson, and I'm still working on my fluidity. So I just want to express how important it is to do it the right way around. I don't regret anything I did. Where I am, who I am today is where I started from, but it's taken this long to get that fluidity going. It's just been a long, hard road to get that way. So listen to Sensei Mattson when he talks about conditioning, and I don't know if we'll have a chance to, I think Joe wanted to do a sanction test, and I'm going to give him a pretty good, strong test. And I don't want to get the wrong idea because of what Sensei Mattson was saying. John's been studying a long time, so it's all a development. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to talk a little bit on conditioning. But again, conditioning is very important. I do believe you should be well conditioned. This way you can go and study anywhere you like and not worry about it. Okay?
Thank you. Very good. To continue on what Fidel said about conditioning, there's an awful lot of teachers who feel that if they just do the kata, they don't really need conditioning, that this is not something that you do for your health reasons. Karate is just something to learn how to fight. And of course, you can learn to punch and kick. The problem is if you ever do get into a fight, you get under stress, you should be and must be in very, very good condition. That means you should be able to fight a 2 or 3 minute round under great stress and pressure and using your technique. If you sort of just fall apart when you get into a real fight because there is nothing behind those techniques, then that's a lack of conditioning. And one of the things that IUKF does is we stress the tests. We even have what we call a fire dragon test that we run every summer, where people have to meet minimum standards, and they're pretty tough. Of course, Fidel always comes out #1 because he is in superb condition. But he trains in other things besides his Uechi-ryu. And the one thing about starting off really hard, it's a lot easier, it's a lot faster. And by the way, even Fidel's teacher comes from the same kind of teacher who came from the same kind of teacher and understanding that I came from when I was on Okinawa. So the thing is, we saw the young bucks over there pounding on one another, and what they were doing is just saying, I'm tougher than you are, I can take a stronger punch, and they would actually put bets on who could hit someone the hardest and knock them down and whatever. And of course, as a 19-year-old, I was more intrigued with that than Master Uechi sitting over there touching me. I would rather have someone pounding on me. But you develop fast, but then it takes you to when you get a little bit older, and then you start softening up because you can't train that way any longer. You can't go through that intense kind of a training. So what happens is, in Japan, they train that way all the time. But the career of a Japanese college student athlete is generally ends at the senior year. And then they stop totally because they said, I could never keep up that kind of a regime, that kind of training program. And we were over there back in the 60s, and since then, and we've had Japanese fighters that have come over and trained at the Mattson Academy. And they said the same thing. It's a 4-year program. It's like hazing. The seniors haze the new freshmen and just beat the living crap out of them, And it's like a game. It's like the fraternities over here. But at senior year, because of that intensity, that hard training, they don't continue with it. The few of them come back as coaches, but the rest of them just sort of stop. Uechi, if you look around, the average age here is probably 40. And if you look at the
Uechi-ryu in general, we probably have more older students than any other style of karate and martial arts in the world. And that's because the training is not just about pounding one another. If you keep that up, you aren't going to keep many students. You know, first off, not many people can take that kind of training. And if it's not natural, if it's just something you stand there for 10, 15 seconds, you can hold your breath while the sensei pounds you and beats on you. And then what happens while you're moving? You know, can you take that same punch? You know, if someone's throwing a kick at you and you're moving in at the same time, will your stomach muscles be flexed enough so that you can take a shot? That's Sanshin training. It's not while you're standing there being hit. Anybody can go through that. And also, if you're not careful, you can create some internal damages that aren't so much fun either. I won't go into that today. But be careful when you train. Be careful as you become a sensei. There's nothing, you know, I wrote an essay on Uechi-ryu.com about how I used to attract teachers or students back in the, well, this was 1958. I created a demonstration team, some of my first students, and we'd go out to rotaries. I gave hundreds of demonstrations where I let people from the audience come up and hit me in the stomach. And I did be breaking boards and everything we could do, you know, rocks, bricks. But we got few students that way. But I was the only game in town, so I did get students. But then as more and more karate came around, I got less and less students from those demonstrations. And one day, you know, after a demo, I went out to the audience and talked to the people, and I said, "Oh, how'd you like the demonstrations?" "Oh, it's fantastic. You know, it's great entertainment." All right. And I said, "Well, would you like to study?" He said, "Are you kidding? You know, you think I'm crazy? You know, I want to do that?" You know. And all of a sudden, I'm saying to myself, "That's not why I came out here." But on Okinawa, everybody knows about karate. So the one thing that the Uechi people had was this strong Sanshin, you know, as you got more advanced. And they did some testing. And what they would do when they go on a demonstration, the young guys, that's what they did. They showed the audience how tough Uechi people were, and they'd hit them with everything. But you'd get young people who wanted that kind of training to come to your dojo. And so you became very selective. And the Okinawans, of course, a lot of the Okinawans that train now are really tough guys, you know, that's what they train for. But you don't see older people, unless they're the senseis, and then they don't train that much anymore. But the students are all kids, you know, and youngsters. You don't see the 40-year-old average people in the dojo. And I think the reason why we made this transition, because I only had the toughest people in Boston that stayed with me. The Van Canas, the Visas, and the Jimmy Maloney's, you know, they're still here, and they're still training. But that's very, very unusual. All the normal people took off. I kept all of those guys who just loved to be beat on, you know, and so that perpetuated that kind of training. And what I'm trying to do, and have been trying to do, is to let people know, if you want to build a good dojo, that training is not, that's not the training. That's just a demonstration of the strength that you're supposed to be developing through years of doing Sanshin. So Fidel showing you what someone who's been training for many, many years understand what that is all about. That's not the way you go as a white belt and expect your teacher to go up to you and hit you when you're a white belt. It won't work. Okay, so Fidel, if you want to do that? Sanshin, and it sort of represents all of the ingredients of the style that I appreciate as an older person. So I can do it at 69. A general audience, not just the children, not just the tough guys, but you know, the whole community. And the interesting thing about Uechi-ryu is that we make athletes out of people who are not athletes. You go to the football team, you know, the kids, they use tryouts, and only the best athletes. And how did they become athletes? Well, they might have been gifted, they might have just been natural, they might have taken sports before, but the coaches take the best, and the rest of them, you know, they have to go take another one. They keep going down the line until finally there might be basketball or something else. But karate, we can take anyone, and we can work with them, and we can make athletes out of them. And that was the message that I'm trying to make. And at 69, I still keep doing it. And that was the message that
I'm trying to make. And at 69, I still keep doing it. Punch in.